It is a strange and unsettling thought that nobody truly cares about you as much as you think they do. From childhood, we believe that our joys and failures are noticed, our smallest embarrassments scrutinized, our triumphs whispered about. But the truth is far less dramatic. People are far too entangled in their own worries, their own self-doubts, their own private struggles to spend much time considering yours. This is not a bleak revelation, but a liberating one. It means that most of what keeps us up at night, the embarrassing moments replaying in our minds, the fear of looking foolish, the worry about what others think, is largely irrelevant. People forget. They forget your stumbles, your mistakes, your awkward words. They move on because they must. They have their own burdens to carry. Consider how often you replay another person's missteps. Do you spend days thinking about someone else's embarrassing moment? Do you analyze their every word, their every failure? No, because your mind is occupied with your own concerns. And if you do not dwell on the mistakes of others, why assume they dwell on yours? Once you realize this, a weight is lifted. You no longer need to live in fear of how you appear to others. You can take risks, make mistakes, and fail spectacularly, knowing that the world will not collapse in judgment. The moment you stop believing that you are the center of everyone's attention, you become free. Free to learn, free to grow, and free to live, not as a carefully curated performance, but as yourself. We live as though an invisible audience watches our every move, analyzing, critiquing, and recording our failures for future humiliation. We imagine that every misstep is being discussed, every awkward moment replayed in the minds of those who witnessed it. But here is the truth. The courtroom in your mind is empty. The jury you fear does not exist. People are not watching you nearly as closely as you believe. They are too consumed with their own struggles, worrying about their own mistakes, their own reputation, their own insecurities. Think about the last time you saw someone trip in public or say something foolish. Did you spend hours thinking about it? Days? The answer is almost certainly no. You noticed it for a moment, perhaps chuckled or cringed, and then moved on. And yet, when the roles are reversed, we convince ourselves that the world will never forget our failures. This illusion of scrutiny is a prison of our own making. We hesitate to take risks, fearing embarrassment. We hold our tongues, afraid of saying the wrong thing. We reject opportunities, dreading the possibility of looking foolish. But the world is not waiting to judge you. It is too busy trying to keep itself together. The day you accept this is the day you become free. Free to speak boldly, free to make mistakes, free to stumble and laugh at yourself. The world is not holding its breath, waiting for you to fail. It is simply moving forward, as it always has, indifferent to the weight you place on your own fears. The illusion of self-importance is not just a harmless mistake. It is a slow poison. When we believe that we matter more to the world than we actually do, we set ourselves up for a lifetime of disappointment. We expect recognition and do not receive it. We seek approval and find indifference. We crave admiration and instead are ignored. And when reality does not meet our inflated expectations, despair follows. Many people walk through life believing that the world should take notice of them, that their struggles should be acknowledged, their achievements celebrated. And yet the world moves on, unmoved by our demands. This is not cruelty, it is simply how things are. The sun does not shine brighter because of our victories, nor does the earth pause in sorrow for our defeats. The more we chase validation, the more it slips away. No amount of applause can ever satisfy a heart that depends on it. Even the most beloved figures in history, thinkers, artists, leaders, were at times dismissed, criticized, or forgotten. If the world did not stop for them, why would it stop for you? But there is another way. Instead of demanding that others care, we can shift our focus outward. We can find significance not in being seen, but in seeing others. Not in being admired, but in offering admiration. Not in being loved, but in loving. The cure for despair is not attention, it is purpose, and purpose is never found in the eyes of an audience, but in the work of our own hands. The great irony of life is that we become truly significant not by demanding attention, but by giving it. The people who are most remembered, most loved, and most valued are not those who spent their days worrying about how they were perceived, but those who turned their focus outward. Think of the figures who have shaped history, not through loud self-promotion, but through quiet dedication. The teacher who patiently nurtures young minds, never seeking applause. The scientist who spends years in solitude, chasing truths that may never bear their name. The friend who listens without needing to be heard, who cares without needing to be noticed. These are the people who leave a mark, not because they asked the world to care about them, but because they first cared about the world. Yet we resist this truth. We are conditioned to believe that if we do not make ourselves seen, we will be forgotten. So we grasp for recognition, for likes and applause, for some proof that we matter. But significance is not something that can be taken. It is something that must be given away. The paradox is this: the more you chase attention, the less valuable you become in the eyes of others. But the moment you stop demanding to be seen, you free yourself to do something worth seeing. Those who make the deepest impact are not the ones who seek to be important, but the ones who dedicate themselves to things greater than themselves. We spend our lives searching for meaning in the eyes of others, as if their approval could carve our existence into something solid and lasting. But this is a futile pursuit, doomed from the start. The opinions of others are fleeting, their memories unreliable, and their concern shallow. No matter how much effort we put into shaping their perception of us, it will never be enough, because they were never truly paying attention in the first place. Consider how quickly admiration fades. A great achievement may win applause today, but by tomorrow the crowd has moved on. Even the most celebrated individuals, athletes, artists, thinkers, are eventually replaced in the public's mind. The songs that once defined a generation are forgotten. The faces that once adorned magazine covers become unrecognizable. If this is the fate of the famous, what hope does the ordinary person have of being permanently remembered? Yet, we exhaust ourselves trying. We carefully curate our words, our actions, even our personalities, sculpting them into a version of ourselves we think will be accepted. We modify our dreams to fit expectations. We hold back our true thoughts for fear of disapproval. And for what? A moment of approval from people who will forget us the moment we leave the room? Real meaning is not found in the eyes of others. Their gaze is fickle, their memory brief. If you place your worth in their hands, you will spend your life chasing something that slips through your fingers like sand. Instead, find your meaning elsewhere, in the work you do, in the love you give, in the truths you uphold. Let go of the need to be seen, and instead focus on what is real, what is lasting, because the world's approval will vanish like smoke. But a life well lived will stand, even if no one is watching. You are not as important to other people as you think you are. This is not an insult, it is a freedom. You agonize over what people think of you, replaying conversations, overanalyzing expressions, worrying about how you were perceived. But here is the truth. Most people do not think of you nearly as much as you imagine. Their opinions of you are fleeting, their judgments momentary. We assume that when we make a mistake, others carry it with them, forming conclusions about who we are. But how often do you dwell on someone else's awkward moment? You may notice it, perhaps even laugh at it, but within minutes, maybe even seconds, it fades into the background of your own thoughts. Why? Because you have your own worries, your own concerns, your own struggles. We live in a world where each person is the protagonist of their own story. In your mind, you are the main character, and everyone else is watching. But in reality, everyone around you is too busy starring in their own lives to play the supporting role in yours. They are focused on their own failures, their own dreams, their own insecurities. The weight of other people's judgment is often just the echo of your own insecurities. You fear their criticism, their whispered opinions, their silent disapproval. But in reality, most of what you think they see in you is merely a reflection of what you already believe about yourself. A person who secretly feels inadequate will assume others see them as weak. Someone who doubts their intelligence will hear condescension in innocent remarks. A person who feels unlovable will search for rejection even in kindness. We project our deepest fears onto the world and then live as if they are true. But here's the question: what if you are wrong? What if the harsh voices you imagine in the minds of others exist only in your own? What if the judgment you fear is not actually there? How much of your life has been controlled by shadows, by ghosts of opinions that were never spoken? You hesitate before speaking because you assume people will think you foolish. You hold back from pursuing something new because you assume others will expect you to fail. You shrink yourself because you assume the world is waiting to mock you. But is it? Or is it just your own reflection staring back at you, whispering lies you have believed for too long? The truth is, most people are not dissecting your words or your actions. They are too preoccupied with their own fears, their own insecurities, their own silent battles. And once you realize that their judgment is not as real or as harsh as you think, you are free. Free to try, free to fail, free to exist without apology. Because in the end, the voice that has held you captive has never been theirs. It has always been yours, and only you can silence it. The most powerful people in history were often despised in their own time. The thinkers, the revolutionaries, the saints, and the visionaries. Many of them lived lives of rejection, ridicule, and loneliness. Some were mocked, some were imprisoned, some were even killed for their beliefs. And yet, they changed the world. If you believe that being liked is a measure of your worth, consider this. The greatest minds were rarely embraced by their generation. Socrates was sentenced to death by his own people. Galileo was condemned for speaking the truth. Van Gogh died in obscurity, unrecognized for his genius. If these figures, whose names now echo through history, were ignored, hated, or forgotten in their time, why should you expect universal approval? People dislike what they do not understand. They resist what challenges them. They ridicule what makes them uncomfortable. If you live in fear of their disapproval, you will never rise above mediocrity. Because mediocrity is the only thing that is safe. It does not offend, does not challenge, does not provoke, but it also does not change anything. So ask yourself, do you want to be liked, or do you want to matter? Do you want the temporary comfort of approval, or the lasting impact of a life well lived? The greatest figures in history did not waste their energy trying to make people care about them. They cared about something greater than themselves, and in doing so, they became unforgettable. You cannot control how others see you. You cannot demand their admiration, but you can live with conviction, knowing that even if the world does not recognize your worth today, time has a way of revealing what truly matters. The fear of being insignificant drives many to seek attention in all the wrong ways. Desperate to be noticed, people chase fame, controversy, or validation, mistaking visibility for value. But true significance is never found in how many people are watching. It is found in what you are doing when no one is. Look around, and you will see this hunger everywhere. People posting endlessly on social media, hoping for likes. People forcing themselves into conversations just to be heard. People exaggerating their struggles, their successes, their opinions, anything to capture the fleeting attention of an audience that will soon forget them. They believe that if enough people are looking at them, they must matter. But attention is not the same as importance. The loudest person in the room is rarely the wisest. The most followed account online is not necessarily the most meaningful. The people who make the greatest impact on the world often do so quietly, without applause, without spectacle. They build, they create, they serve, not for recognition, but because the work itself is worth doing. Chasing significance through visibility is a losing game. The world's attention is fickle, its memory short. If you live for applause, you will die when the clapping stops. Instead, seek to matter in ways that are real. Do work that lasts. Love people deeply, not performatively. Build something that remains when the audience moves on. Because the truth is, most people are too busy chasing their own significance to give you theirs. And if you rely on them to make you feel important, you will never be anything more than a reflection of their fleeting interest. The happiest people do not spend their time obsessing over how they are perceived. They are too engaged in life to waste energy on the opinions of others. They are building, creating, loving, learning. Too occupied with living to constantly look over their shoulders, wondering what the world thinks of them. Unhappiness often comes from self-consciousness. The more you think about how you are being perceived, the more you hesitate, second-guess, and hold yourself back. You analyze every word before you speak, replay every interaction after it ends. You measure your worth by how others react to you. And in doing so, you become trapped, living not for yourself, but for an imaginary audience that is not even watching. Meanwhile, the truly content are moving forward, unburdened. They pursue what excites them, even if others don't understand. They make mistakes and laugh at them, rather than agonizing over them. They are free, not because people care about them, but because they have stopped caring whether people do. Think of the last time you were fully absorbed in something, reading a book, working on a project, laughing with friends. In those moments, you were not concerned with how you appeared, you were simply present. That is where happiness lives, not in the exhausting game of managing perception, but in the simple act of being. If you want to be happy, stop trying to control how the world sees you. Let people think what they will, because they will anyway. And while they waste their time judging, you will be too busy living. Social media has turned this problem into a plague. It has made people believe they must constantly prove their worth, broadcasting their lives in the hope that someone, anyone, will care. But here's the irony. Everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone is posting, sharing, curating, desperate to be noticed. And yet, no one is truly paying attention. Scroll through any feed and you will see it. People showcasing their best moments, their happiest smiles, their greatest achievements. But behind the screens, they are just as anxious, just as uncertain, just as hungry for validation as you are. They post hoping for likes, you scroll hoping to be seen. And in this endless cycle, real connection is lost. Social media gives the illusion of an audience, but in reality it is a crowd where everyone is speaking and no one is listening. A person may like your post, but they will forget it within seconds. A comment may boost your ego for a moment, but it will not fill the deeper void. And yet, people become addicted to this hollow form of attention, mistaking it for real significance. But significance does not come from strangers clicking a button. It does not come from metrics, from numbers on a screen. It comes from real life, relationships, work, purpose. The people who truly care about you are not the ones scrolling past your life, but the ones who are present in it. If you vanished from social media today, how many of your so-called followers would even notice? And if the answer troubles you, then perhaps it is time to seek meaning elsewhere. Not in the world's empty gaze, but in the depth of a life truly lived. If there is one truth you must accept, it is this: nobody cares about you. Not in the way you fear, not in the way you hope. The world is not holding its breath, waiting for you to fail or succeed. People are too consumed by their own struggles, their own insecurities, their own quiet battles to truly fixate on you. And while this may seem like a harsh truth, it is in fact a liberating one. It means you are free. Free from the exhausting burden of trying to impress, trying to be liked, trying to make the world take notice. Free to pursue what matters to you, not what is expected of you. Free to fail without shame, to succeed without needing applause. Free to be yourself without apology, because the audience you imagined was never really watching in the first place.